EU astrology, the Templars, secret history, reincarnation lines, all of these we're going to decode in this video to shed light on the spiritual battle that's going on for the future of Europe. Europe is in a lot of trouble. There are geopolitical tensions, economic, demographic tensions, you name it. In this video, we're going to go a level deeper still, and we're going to look at the spiritual dynamics, some key spiritual developments in the spiritual history of Europe, and how they translate into today's situation in order to understand what's really going on from a metaphysical perspective, because that's the perspective that gives you the deepest insight. So we're going to talk about the secret history of the Knights Templars, a key organization in the history of Europe, as you'll find out in this video, which has a lot to do with what's going on right now, even if you may not suspect so, if you don't know the backgrounds. And we're going to uncover some key reincarnation lines that allows you to understand the current players and what the background is, where they're coming from. And lastly, we're going to look at the astrology, the astrological patterns of the coming years in order to have an understanding of what's coming, of where things are going. All of this in this video. So make sure to watch it till the end and let's go. This is going to be deep. I tell you, it's going to be deep. So let's start with first understanding the situation, the tensions that exist that I mentioned, the geopolitical tensions clearly that exist currently in Europe. Europe in many ways is a loser, if not the main loser of the current transition, of the shifts that going on from the unipolar world order to the new and emerging multipolar world order. And this is happening. Why is it happening? Because, well, the Europeans, they haven't found their place in this shift. They don't really, they have no strategy for this shift. They're currently led by a group of people who are globalists, who are still very much believe in the unipolar world order, while at the same time, with the second Trump administration, the US is going back to the Trump doctrine and to America first, which makes the US very supremely ready for the new age, for the new world age, for the new era that we're going into. Think about it. The US with the America First Trump doctrine is going to increasingly be like, you handle your own shit. We don't want to get involved in what protect yourself, if you need to, whatever, right? If you have conflicts with others around, we're not necessarily going to help. There's still going to be allies and friends, but not like it was before, where it's a united front, right? Everybody knows that in Europe right now. And the US with America First can do this. If you look at it, resources are important in today's world, extremely important, right? Because at the end of the day, the economy is built on production, on industry. Wars are led through industrial production, right? Not through fancy, made up GDP. You can have sky high GDP, but if it's all just services, people giving services to each other, you can't go to war, right? And you're seeing that right now with North Korea being able to deliver shells to Russia, while the Europeans cannot match that production. They cannot match North Korea's production when they're, when they want to send ammunition to Ukraine, because they don't have the industry, apart from Germany. Most of the European countries don't have the industry, they're deindustrialized at this point, right? And resources are key to have an industry. And if you look at the resources, how they're spread globally, Russia is number one, when you put all resources together. US is number two. I think Saudi Arabia is 3. And Canada is 4, Iran is 5, right? China is 6. And what does that tell you? Well, US together with Canada basically, extension, together with Canada, and if you add the Monroe Doctrine, right? US is going to have access to resources in South America if necessary. You can see already with Milei, for instance, right? Where that's happening, where Elon Musk went over there and got the lithium. So the US is going to be fine. US is going to have massive amount of resources, right? Even if it's a closed off block in this new multipolar world order, right? Russia is definitely going to be fine, right? China has access to the Middle East, right? Has a preferential relationship. It's going to be fine. India has some good, setup. India has less resources, but has deals set up with the Middle East and with Russia. to be taken care of. But the Europeans, what do? The Europeans have no resources, right? They're nowhere near, not just the top 10, they're nowhere even in the top 20, 30. And all of their prior access to resources was based on their post-imperial deals like the French had in Africa. And they're getting their asses kicked. They're getting kicked out of those countries, right? So this is not a long-term strategy. So what's going to happen is that increasingly you have a Europe led by globalists, right? And globalism comes with wokeism, right? Woke globalists who are eroding the cohesion of the place. This is an additional factor. Who are bringing in a lot of people into the continent who are not necessarily aligned with the culture of the place, right? Who are flooding the place from everywhere, and they're coming, without much respect for the place. I say that as somebody who, I know it. I've spent many years in Germany, France, UK. I've seen how those places have been deteriorating with the changes that have happened there, with people coming in there who don't have respect for the place and for the people. And as this is happening and the cohesion, internal cohesion is eroding, at the same time, the continent is setting itself up to be surrounded by enemies, right? So the Europeans, they have been poking the bear for a long time, right? And just kind of seem really determined on going to war with Russia, right? And at the same time, the Islamic world has the potential, at least, to flip hostile. And there's no resources. So you can put all of these together and you can see that this is a very difficult situation that the Europeans are in. Very, very difficult situation. And as this is happening, you ask yourself, like, what are the people who are making these decisions? Like, what's wrong with them? Why would they accept the Nord Stream, for instance, to be blown up and then to be cut off from Russia, right? Why would they accept all of this? Well, the people in charge, the people in power are not necessarily, they don't necessarily have the interest of the people of that place, of those countries in mind. What they have in mind is the interest of transnational globalist elites. So the globalists, the bureaucrats who are running the country, they are facing resistance from another group of people, the patriots, people who want to kind of create a Europe that can have a healthy identity, a healthy foundation, and then can have healthy relations with other blocs, right? Because you can't do that with the way they're continuing with the globalists, with the way the globalists are running the place. So this is the situation that the Europeans face increasingly. And this situation, it has a spiritual origin. It has a spiritual origin. And this is where it's going to get interesting, where we're going to get into some esoteric and metaphysical history, right? And you might ask yourself, what has this got to do with this? But you will see. So bear with me, follow my thoughts here, and you will see exactly where this leads. So we're going to go back to the Crusades. We're going to go back to the Crusades, to the Second Crusade. So after the First Crusade happened, there was an organization that came into being called the Knights Templars. Right? Initially, this was founded in 1119, and initially this was just a group that was founded to protect the pilgrims that were going to Jerusalem, to the Holy Land, right? A group of kind of elite fighters. And the founder of this organization was somebody by the name of Hugues de Payen. And he's a legendary sort of figure. He founded this with 8 other knights. He founded this group. And they went there, initially they were just elite warriors, some kind of special forces basically in the Middle Ages. And they were protecting the pilgrims. But shortly, there was some rapid and absolutely insane, historically, normal historians cannot explain this for you, a rapid increase in the power and size of this organization. They became incredibly powerful, right? They just amassed a lot of money suddenly and a lot of land, and lots of people flocked there, and they became like a major player, something like the equivalent of, if you think about it in today's world, something like the equivalent of one of these big corporations, right? Like Meta or Microsoft or whatever, right? Or Alphabet or something like, obviously they didn't have corporations back then, not in the same way, but they became extremely powerful, right? Extremely powerful. And this happened in a very quick, succession, about 100 years. And the reason why this happened, the esoteric secret reason, which the secret societies have been passing on, the secret knowledge has known, is that under the leadership of Hugues de Payen, the Templars, they encountered the ancient mystic spiritual sciences and the powers that come with these spiritual sciences. So you have to know, before that, the Europeans were in the Dark Ages, right? There was hundreds of years of Dark Ages, and the Dark Ages were dark because the Europeans, after the fall of the Roman Empire, after the barbarians and the Huns, swept everybody, they had lost access, they lost kind of their connection with their own ancient wisdom traditions, right? And they were kind of in that dark time, in that dark age, right? And after the Dark Ages is when the Templars, under Hugues de Payan, they discover first this knowledge and these secret sciences. So they had exchanges, they met mystic societies, and they met the Sufis. The Islamic world had very advanced Sufis at that time, who had maintained the highest level of spiritual science. Sohrawardi, Ibn Arabi, Jilani. There was a lot of people who were in exchange with them as well in that area. And there was relics that the Templars found. They found, presumably, we don't know about the details. It's not absolutely fully illuminated, but they found very powerful relics like the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, the true cross on which the Lord Jesus Christ found his ascension, right? From whence he found his ascension. Now, here is a event where spiritual and mystic and esoteric power and occult power, if you will, directly intertwines with history. Because what happens next? The Templars, after a couple of hundred years of becoming this super powerful entity, right? They, in the 13th century, 14th century, by 1300s, they had turned dark. They turned dark, right? So by the time that Pope Clemens V disbanded them, right? He kind of, cut them off, and he prohibited them, and he kind of, he closed down the curtains. This is like end of the show. By that time, they were under the leadership of somebody called Jacques de Molay, who was their last Grand Master. And this Jacques de Molay, under him, the Templars had become dark initiates. They had become enamored with power. They had become full of the intoxication of power, and they were dark initiates. They were only doing the practices for power and self-glorification, not anymore for the glory of God. And their signs and symbols, insignia, were showing this. For instance, the Templars at this time, they were using the turned around cross, right? The upside down cross. And their initiates had to spit on the Lord, on the crucifix or the face of the Lord, whatever they set up for themselves, God forbid, whatever practices they had. But this came out. These things came out that they had to do this. And at this point, the Templars were disbanded. In official history, it's over. There's no more Templars after that. But the real history is that both of these lines, the initiates of God consciousness, the warriors of God, right, with that initiatic power, and the dark initiates, both of these lines, which came from the Templars, right, the two wings of the Templars, right, the wing of Hugues de Payan and the wing of Jacques de Molay, they both continued eventually. They continued. How did they continue? They became, they infiltrated deep into Europe. They came back to Europe, and they became part of elite groups, meetings, secret societies, and all of the secret societies that shaped the further history of Europe. They came out of this split, right? And it's very important to know, secret societies, there are esoteric societies, they do esoteric practices, but they have a huge influence on history. And it's without them, you wouldn't have had the massive rise of Europe into becoming this world-dominating power. So the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, the Illuminati, the Jesuits, all of these organizations, all of these European secret societies, right? They arose, and many others, they arose out of the influence of the Knights Templars. And it is rumored that certain relics were passed on, and certain relics were kept in certain, in places at the Vatican and elsewhere, where they continue to grant the spiritual power, very high supreme levels, supernal levels of spiritual power to those who wield them. Now, This esoteric history, it has, now you're still saying, okay, so what? Okay, what's happening here? You will understand everything once I show you the next piece of evidence in this story, which is the karmic lines of reincarnation. The karmic lines of reincarnation, because they lead us all the way to the present time, all the way back to the present time, all the way from the Crusades and the Knights Templars, all the way to the present time. So let's do that. Let's have a look at the reincarnation lines. So let's have a look at the reincarnation lines. And we have them here on this infographic that I'm going to show you. And we're going to see where things lead and how they lead from the Knights Templars to the present day. Now this map, or these lines, they're based on the work of Frank Felber, whom you can see here. So Frank Felber, he is the leading seer, current seer of reincarnation lines. He's a mystic master and seer in Austria, and someone I am privileged to call a spiritual ally. Now, based on Frank Felber's insights on these European karmic lines, we can really follow what happens from that split of the Knights Templars that we talked about. So let's have a look at Hugues de Payan. Hugues de Payan, he is reincarnated as Roger Oak. Roger Oak, you can see here, by the way, in reincarnation lines, what you want to look at specifically is the facial expression. Not so much, what you wear is obviously, the fitting for the time and the era. But the expression of the face is absolutely key, because the face is an expression of the soul, right? So the face directly expresses the underlying spirit, right? The spirit, which then is the blueprint for the soul, and the soul, which then shows itself in the physical, right? The face always tells you which spirit you're dealing with, and the eyes, right? So obviously you also have to look at the charts and the astrology charts. We're not going to do this. This video would take 10 hours otherwise to look at everybody's astrology charts. But the signs are very clear in all of the astrology charts for all of these people that I'm showing you. So Roger Oak, who's that? He was a Middle East correspondent, right? Interestingly enough, French, who went to the Middle East, who went to the Holy Land, repeating the karmic patterns. And he is a key figure in the French patriot movement, insofar as, influential, but also his daughter, Marion Maréchal, who is a key politician on the French alt-right sort of movement, patriot movement, whatever you want to call them. There's different names that, these groupings have. And you can see this pattern repeat, where many of the other original Templars, I've only put some of them in here, there's far more of them, where this repeats again and again, like Jocelyn de Courtenay here that you see, who has a direct line with a historic parallelism with Marine Le Pen. There are similar ones for the other key people in the Le Pen family and the other people in their grouping as well, their political grouping. And you have here Tancred of Tarento, who was an Italian combatant of the Crusaders and specifically of the Templars. And their Italian companion, basically, has a direct historical parallelity with Matteo Salvini. An I is missing here. Matteo Salvini. And so you see this repeat. Okay, these are the people who come from that line, from the Templars line. What about Jacques de Molay? So the person that we talked about, who was responsible for the other line in European history. So from Jacques de Molay, we have a line going directly to the Count of Saint-Germain. So this person was a big figure in 18th century France, who introduced the idea to the elites of immortality, right? This idea, this fixation, obsession that the elites have with becoming immortal, at that time through alchemical means and now through transhumanist technologies, is the preferred pathway now. And from the Count of Saint-Germain, it goes through to somebody who is a key figure in this big family, which is a key family in governing Europe's and especially setting up Europe's financial systems, which I'm not going to name, Jacob James Meyer of that family. And from there, the line goes to, so who's that? President of the European Central Bank. Okay. So, and you can see here the similarity. Again, the similarity is not just in the face, it's in the charts. Much, much more even so, right? So you need to have the multiple hits to be able to see that. Then other people from that line, from that family that I mentioned, you have them here, right? There's other people from that family. And one goes up here to Executive Board of the European Central Bank. And the other from here to President of the European Commission. So basically what you have is, you have the line of bureaucrats, of the bureaucrats who are currently running the EU, which you can see now clearly in terms of reincarnation lines, where that comes from. And you have the line of the people who are fighting for a different Europe. And you can see as well where they're coming from. Now, they're not alone. There's other people as well in that general field, even though they were not necessarily part of the Templars, but I'm still going to share them as well with you. For instance, you have here Saint Stephen of Hungary, great saint and defender, founder of Hungary, who you can see here directly, beyond any reasonable doubt, the transmission, the transmigration into Viktor Orban. And there's more. You have here Saint Leopold of Austria, who was a backer of the Knights Templars and of the Crusaders from Austria, who is now incarnated, or who has a direct line, a transmigration line onto the other side of the pond as the 45th and now 47th President of the United States of America. So you're seeing some allies here too, okay? You're seeing some allies here for the forces that are trying to take on the globalist bureaucrats. Now that we've decoded these lines, it should become much more clear why we had to look into the Knights Templars, why we had to understand the spiritual backgrounds, the spiritual battle that's going on, and who are the people who are involved in this spiritual battle. There's always going to be individuals. It's always going to be individuals. It's always going to be people who incarnate and embody certain energies and who carry them forward generation to generation and bring those plans back generation to generation, always bringing back those archetypal energies as they reconstellate and then re-express themselves in new characters for the new age. That's how history works. That's how secret spiritual history, esoteric history works, as opposed to the surface history. The surface history, which is just an expression of that spiritual battle that's going on in the background. So that all being said, we have now a good foundation to understand the astrology. And you can see why I'm doing these things. In the past, maybe I didn't go so much into all of this, but this is the real dimension. This is the real dimension which we have to understand. It's not just enough, okay, let's look at the charts and this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Fine. But it's to really be able to position ourselves. We need to understand what's going on. We need to understand the spiritual dynamics that are going on. So now let's have a look at the charts of the European Union. This is the European Union. This is the foundation chart of the European Union, right? The European Union, it's an organization founded in 1993, right? And Brussels or Maastricht, I'm not entirely sure, but it doesn't make a big difference here on the chart. And in this chart, what can you see? You can see a very, very serious organization. Very serious organization. With the sun here, you can see this, the sun in the fourth with Roma, right? It's a continuation of the Roman Empire with Gallia, right? The sort of aspirations of the French for unification of Europe and are carried forward in this European Union, right? Sees itself as a continuation of the Roman Empire. And the sun is opposite Sedna and Caesar, right? So this is about, well, imperial rule and about political intrigue, right? So imperial rule through political intrigue is the essence of this organization. And this organization, it is very, very able to fight. It's bellicose. It can fight, right? It has Mars with Pluto. You can see here Mars with Pluto, the ruthless fighter, the ruthless, going to battle, ruthless fighter. And this ruthless fighter is what? Mars Pluto with Ixion. Ixion is the fight or the strife, the murder within the family, right? Fights that happen within the family, murder that happens within the family is Ixion. And you have Bellona here too, the goddess of war, the deity, Roman goddess of war is here too. Mars Pluto with Bellona. So this is going to be an intensely ruthless organization that can fight for its territory, right? That's going to fight for territory. Yeah, that's going to fight and go to the end to fight for territory. And even go to Ixion to fight with kin, between kin, right? Like brother and brother, fighting brother and brother around territory for this organization. And what do you have on top? You have on top the moon, which is in the opposition to that Pluto-Mars. The moon is with chaos, Jocaste, which is for curse, Rotarino, which is rotary, is like Freemason, chaos, Freemason, Africa on the moon. I'm going to let you decode that yourself. You can decode that yourself. The moon is for the people. The people are in the 10th house, so it's, they're supposedly the rulers, but they're in a direct opposition to the Mars-Pluto, and in attention to Saturn. They're getting a lot of hits. The people are suffering, right? They're getting a lot of tough challenges, and they're here with these asteroids that I read for you. Chaos, Africa, Rotary, Jocaste. You can decode that for yourself. And what else we got? We got Pallas here on Saturn in the 7th house, very serious relations with others. And Belgrade, the asteroid Belgrade is on Saturn. Saturn on Belgrade. So this organization is there to stop or to confront or to limit Belgrade. What's Belgrade? Belgrade stands for Yugoslavia, stands for that part of Europe which is more coming from the Eastern tradition, the Eastern Empire, the Eastern Byzantine Empire, Eastern Roman Empire, not the Western Roman Empire, right? Constantinople as opposed to Rome. So that's being limited, that's being blocked, that's being stopped and blocked by the EU. What else you got? You got here a very interesting constellation. We've got a Uranus-Neptune conjunction here, okay? They're all together actually, they're just showing far. This is basically the idealistic dream, the mystic the mystic rebel constellation of the 90s. This is the idealistic dream of change and revolution, Neptune, Uranus, with what? The idealistic dream of change and revolution is with what? Is with Demokritos, Frieden. Frieden means peace. Peace and democracy with Sarajevo and Kiev. And that's together with Fantasia. Okay? The fantasy of democracy and peace that is brought to Sarajevo and Kiev is part of the dream of this organization, Yugoslavia and Ukraine. And what else is there on that same constellation? Cerberus and Balaam. Cerberus is hell, the dog that guards hell. Balaam is greed, infinite greed, corporate greed. So the dream of bringing peace and democracy to Kiev and Sarajevo, which brings greed, corporate greed, and hell. I'm going to let that as well stand for itself. I think I've said already too much in this video. I said a lot in this video. You got to figure out things for yourself, man. Like, I'm taking all the flack here for you. God knows. Okay. But it's all right. Truth has to be spoken. The truth has to be spoken, and the Lord will be with you when you speak the truth. So that's what we see in the chart. And what else do we have in the chart? What else do we have? We can look at the transits. We can look at the transits coming up right now. You see here the transit for the transit. It tells us obviously what's going to, where we're going towards and the changes that are happening. So when you look at this European Union chart, what you see right away is that currently, since the whole of 24 basically, you have this Uranus position here on the moon, okay, and triggering all of this difficult constellation that we talked about, right? And this constellation, so, which is what? The ruthless territorial struggle, right? The harsh relationships with the partners and enemies were very serious relationships, right? And the people who are kind of suffering from all of this, right? I didn't mention this there. You also have a Jupiter-Venus conjunction, a wide conjunction. So, right, you're going to have a lot of economic success. This is a huge market. It's the world's largest market. Definitely a lot of economic success for this organization, right? Created the world's largest integrated market. I kind of, focused more on the more challenging and problematic things in here. So this is going through a transition, through a breakup, right? Uranus is hitting the moon and all of this, right? So Uranus is bringing revolution and disruption to the people and to the warlike situations, as well as to outside relationships, right? Obviously, we've seen that. The relationships with the US, and this is continuing, right? This is continuing, it's going out, it's coming in, it's continuing, and then it's reaching its kind of peak in March 25, April 25. It's the last hit of this Uranus disruption. So from now till March 25, April 25, you're going to see a lot of further disruptions of the territorial battle for territory that the EU is waging, right? Or that they're supporting, or that they're driving forward, right? In many ways, the Baltics, you can see, and obviously the involvement in Ukraine and supporting the Ukrainians against the Russian invasion, which is going on, and the, special military operation, invasion, whatever you want to call it. And which is, at this point, it's not it's a war. It's a full out, all out war, right? It's obviously a great tragedy, one of the great tragedies of our time, how many people are being slaughtered there. And disruption of the relationships with partners. You're going to see massive, obviously the US is the big one here, right? Over the next few months, Trump's actions are going to show you what's happening, but this is the big one. Massive disruption and changes to the relationships to partners. And it splits within the people. Uranus on moon, split within the people. This is very likely as well. Split within the people. What do I mean with split within the people? I didn't show you this in the previous chart, but no need to go back. But you had Hungary on Lilith in the European chart. Hungary on Lilith, right? Hungaria, the asteroid on Lilith. Lilith stands for the outcast, right? So being the outcast, you can actually, I'll show you this quickly, right? You see this here? Hungary on Lilith. Hungaria on Lilith, right? Lilith is the outcast, and Hungaria stands for Hungary, right? So obviously prime candidate for the split, for leaving the EU is Hungary, Viktor Orban, right? But he's not the only one. Slovakia might go. Others might go, right? It's very likely that there's going to be a split. And within the European nations that are under complete control of the globalists, it's likely that you're going to see movements that are kind of trying to mimic Brexit, right? I don't know which ones now, but you're going to be seeing this. You're going to be seeing movements within certain European nations that are firmly within Europe and within the EU, and they're going to have Brexit-like movements. Oddly enough, at the same time, the British, with their current government, they're very close to the Europeans. With Starmer and so on, they might reconsider joining them, right? So, but you're going to see this. You're going to see this tension pick up between the bureaucrats and the patriots, or what you want to call this split. And lastly, let's have a look at the euro as well, the transits for the euro. Actually, no, one more thing I can show you here. With regards to Europe, we have a upcoming development. So we want to know what's happening next, right? You want to know what's happening next in the coming time. Where is everything going? This sounds crazy. There should be something. This is Euro introduction. This is not the correct one. This is the correct one, right? So with regards to where things are going, Europe is going to be, by the year 2027, you can see this here, by the year 2027, Uranus is exactly on the MC, Uranus on progress MC, okay? So this means what? This means that the organization itself is seen as being completely revolutionized and changing, becoming something completely different by 27. What? Becoming what? Maybe a wartime organization, right? Becoming something completely different. Splitting, becoming something different by 2027, right? Maybe going to a higher level of integration with the remaining states. Now, what happens with the euro? On the euro, you can see here, this is the euro chart, okay? The euro chart, you have a couple of strong placements in Aquarius, all right? This is like a utopian dream and revolutionary dream of communication technologies and networks, communication networks and ideas for social organization, which is written in here. And Pluto is going into Aquarius, obviously, now in the coming years. And this obviously is going to mean that the euro is going to be the first, right, amongst currencies, amongst the BRICS, probably is going to be the first large CBDC, right? Not talking about small experiments here and there. And you can see this as well with this transit here, with Saturn and Neptune going on the descendant in the coming years, right? Already 25 and 26 is going to be here, starting in 25, which is dissolution, right? Neptune on the descendant, you dissolve something. You dissolve and restructure something, while at the same time, you're getting here some trines from this complete transformation and change onto the planets in Aquarius, right? So 25 looks very likely for me, for euro, to be transformed into a currency where the bureaucrats in Brussels have complete control over everything. Know everything. Know every cent and every penny, where it goes, who has it, what you do with it, what you not do with it, who did you support, what did you buy, who did you not support with your money, where is your money, all of that, right? It's all going to be known. It's all going to be known. And obviously, there is then the possibility, the real possibility of wartime taxes, right? Imposed wartime taxes on European citizens. The French already brought this up recently, where they said that we will be able to go after any French citizen anywhere in the world. We will be able to go after their assets in order to support a potential war, a possible war. No matter where you are, no matter where your money is, we'll be able to find it and tax you for the war, for the war efforts, right? So this is the situation that Europe is in. And now we did a lot in this video. I really uncoded and decoded. I should have packed this in multiple videos, but maybe I'll do that in future. We'll do multiple videos instead of just packing everything into one video. But this gives you like the full picture of what's going on in Europe, right? And I showed you the karmic lines, showed you that where people came down on one karmic line, where people came down on the other karmic line, and what that means for us. It doesn't mean, by the way, it doesn't mean that those who came down on the line of the patriots that I showed you, that they are, enlightened God warriors, not necessarily. A lot of them have actually stopped to do the spiritual development. They're not working on their spiritual development. But, a lot of them are closed off from God in many ways, but not, nonetheless, that's still 1,000 times better than those who are openly working for the spread of darkness, on the planet, right? 1,000 times better still than that. Now, we need to find ourselves and our place in all of this. We need to navigate ourselves, and we need to navigate our place in this evolving world while making sure that we take care of our families, of our environment, of ourselves, of our community, and of your own spiritual development, which is key for everything, right? And yes, holistically, your financial development, your economic, your strategic setup is part of it, part and parcel. But you can't work on your spiritual development if your basics not taken care of, right? If you want to work on all of this, on strategizing, but also especially on understanding and overstanding, getting a holistic image of where you are and how you can evolve, you can work with me. You can find the links below. You can find out how to work with me, how to create a holistic image. We can even look into your reincarnation patterns. We can look into your reincarnation lines. This is something different, right? And if that's something that you feel called for and that you feel a calling for that, we can do that too. So do that, have a look and see if that makes sense for you. And until the next time, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet, hit the notification bell, make sure all of that's done. And let me know in the comments how you feel about this, what you think about this big story that we unfolded here, which parts you want to see next, what aspects you want to see next or think about more and explore more together. And until the next time, be well, all the best, be blessed.